The subway car jolted forward, rattling through the underground tunnels of New York City. I clutched the metal pole with swollen fingers, my belly, 9 months pregnant, pressing against strangers as I fought to keep my balance. My ankles throbbed like they were filled with cement, and my lower back burned with each sway of the train. The F train during rush hour was never comfortable, but at 38 weeks pregnant, it was practically torture. "Excuse me," a young man with kind eyes said, rising from his seat. "Please take my seat." Relief washed over me as I whispered a shaky, "Thank you." I sank down onto the hard plastic, the small mercy feeling like salvation. The constant pressure on my spine eased slightly, and I placed protective hands over my rounded stomach, feeling my daughter's reassuring kicks beneath my palms. But before I could fully exhale, I felt a hand on my arm. Firm, insistent. "Grace," my husband Justin hissed, his voice low but sharp. He glanced meaningfully at his mother, who stood beside him, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. "Get up. Mom can't stand. Be respectful." The train car seemed to go silent, though logically I knew the usual. Cacophony of screeching tracks and murmured conversations continued. I looked up at Justin's face, once so beloved to me, now tightened with that familiar expression of impatience whenever I failed to immediately yield to his mother's unspoken demands. Barbara, my mother-in-law of just 2 years, hovered with theatrical sighs, one hand placed delicately on her lower back, the other clutching Justin's sleeve. Her salon-perfect hair didn't move as the train swayed. Her cream cashmere sweater looked pristine despite the grime of public transport. At 62, she was hardly frail, having boasted just last week about her Pilates certification. I can't," I stammered, my voice barely audible over the train's rumble. Justin's grip tightened. "Grace," he repeated, warning in his tone. "Mom's arthritis is acting up." Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes as I looked around. Several passengers watched the scene unfold, their expressions ranging from confusion to outright disapproval. A businessman in a charcoal suit pointedly looked away. A teenager with purple hair and multiple piercings stared openly, her eyes narrowed. A woman about my age, likely on her way home from work, shook, her head almost imperceptibly. Something deep inside me wanted to fight, to explain to Justin that the baby was pressing against my sciatic nerve, that I'd been on my feet all day at the elementary school where I taught 4th grade, that the doctor had specifically warned me about the dangers of standing too long in my condition. But 3 years with Justin had taught me that such explanations would only be viewed as excuses, as defiance, as disrespect to Barbara, the cardinal sin in the Hayes family hierarchy. I rose shakily to my feet, one hand bracing against the metal pole, the other cradling my belly. The subway lurched, and I stumbled slightly. Barbara slid into the seat with the efficiency of a practiced predator, her movements belying any hint of arthritis or discomfort. "Thank you, son," she announced loudly enough for the entire car to hear, patting Justin's hand approvingly. "At my age, respect matters more than anything." She settled in, arranging her designer handbag on her lap, not sparing me a glance. The humiliation burned my cheeks as I stood there, swaying with the train's movement, feeling my daughter's indignant kicks. 9 months of creating life inside me, and I was worth less than Barbara's momentary comfort. 9 months of headaches and backaches and nausea, and I was still invisible in my own marriage. I caught fragments of whispers around me. "Did you see that?" Made his pregnant wife stand. "Some people shouldn't be parents." Each murmur was a needle of shame, though I wasn't sure anymore if the shame was for being so publicly humiliated or for allowing myself to be in this position at all. When had I become this person? When had I started accepting this treatment as normal? As I stared blankly at the subway map above the windows, trying to focus on anything but the pain in my back and the ache in my heart, I felt someone's gaze. Not the uncomfortable scrutiny of the other passengers, but something more purposeful. From across the aisle, an older woman leaned forward in her seat. Her wool coat was simple but elegantly tailored, and her silver hair was pulled back in a chic chignon that spoke of money that didn't need to announce itself. But it was her diamond earrings that caught my eye. They sparkled like a crown in the fluorescent lighting of the subway car, capturing and refracting the light in brilliant, confident bursts. Her eyes, sharp, intelligent, assessing, moved from me to Justin to Barbara, taking in the tableau with a shrewd understanding that made me feel suddenly exposed, as though she could read every unhappy moment of the past 3 years on my face. Then her lips curved into a knowing smirk. She straightened in her seat, her posture impeccable, and spoke with a voice that somehow cut through the train's noise without being raised. Clear, cultured, and coldly amused. "I know you," she said, looking directly at Barbara. The car went silent. Justin froze, his hand still on my arm. Barbara's smugness faltered for a moment, her eyes widening slightly as she regarded the elegant stranger. "I'm sorry," Barbara replied with practiced politeness, though I could see tension in the set of her shoulders. "Have we met?" The woman's smile remained, but it didn't reach her eyes, which had hardened to glittering points, as sharp as her diamonds. "Oh, yes," she said. "We most certainly have." And every passenger in that train car leaned slightly closer, waiting for the truth this stranger was about to unveil. "Irene Wallace," the woman said, watching as the color drained from Barbara's face. "I chaired the Children's Future Foundation 15 years ago. You sat on our board for approximately 7 months before disappearing." Barbara's knuckles whitened around her purse strap. I think you're mistaking me for someone else," she stammered, the practiced poise crumbling under Irene's steady gaze. "No mistake," Irene replied, her voice carrying clearly through the now hushed subway car. "I never forget a face, especially not one associated with $50,000 of missing donation funds. Funds that were meant for underprivileged children's education programs." A collective gasp rippled through the car. Justin's grip on my arm loosened as he stared at his mother in confusion. "Mom?" he questioned, his voice suddenly uncertain. Barbara's face contorted through several emotions: shock, fear, and finally, a hardened defensiveness. "This woman is confused," she declared loudly. "Or worse, she's deliberately trying to slander me. I've never stolen a dime in my life." Irene didn't flinch. Instead, she reached into her elegant handbag and removed a slim phone. With a few taps, she pulled up something and turned the screen toward Barbara. "Our annual charity. Gala, 2009. There you are, standing right beside me. Barbara Hunt, as you called yourself then." Several passengers had discreetly shifted to get a better view. Justin released my arm entirely to step closer to Irene's phone. "The investigation stalled when you left town," Irene continued calmly. "But the Foundation's records are quite meticulous. We know exactly which donations were rerouted. The statute of limitations may have expired for criminal charges, but some of us never forgot." I watched as Justin's face transformed, confusion giving way to dismay, then to the beginnings of anger. Barbara's carefully constructed image of self-sacrifice and moral superiority, the image she'd used to control him, to control us for years, was cracking before his eyes. "Is this true?" he demanded, turning to his mother. "Did you steal from a children's charity?" Barbara's voice rose shrilly. "You're going to believe a stranger over your own mother? After everything I've sacrificed for you?" The subway lurched into a station, the doors sliding open. A few passengers exited, but most stayed, riveted by the unfolding drama. New passengers boarded, immediately sensing the tension in the car. "Justin," I said quietly, placing my hand on his arm, "let's discuss this at home." He barely glanced at me, his attention fixed on his mother's increasingly panicked expression. "No, I want to know right now. Is what she's saying true?" Irene Wallace spoke again, her tone measured and precise. "Your mother served on at least 3 other charitable boards in the tri-state area between 2006 and 2011. Each organization reported financial irregularities during her tenure. Each time she vanished before any formal investigation could conclude." "You have no proof," Barbara spat, her veneer of gentility completely abandoned. "Actually," Irene replied, "I have quite a lot of it. I kept all the documentation when I stepped down from the foundation. Call it a personal project of mine to keep track of people like you." Something about Irene's calm certainty seemed to finally penetrate Justin's shock. He took a step back from his mother, his expression hardening. In that moment, I saw a flash of the man I'd fallen in love with years ago, the one who believed in justice and fairness before Barbara had re-entered his life and twisted those values to serve her purposes. The train pulled into the next station, our stop. As the doors opened, Barbara stood abruptly, nearly knocking into a teenage girl who was trying to exit. "This is slander," she hissed at Irene. "You'll be hearing from my lawyers." Irene's smile was glacial. "I look forward to the discovery process." Barbara pushed past the boarding passengers, her shoulders rigid with fury. Justin hesitated, looking between his mother's retreating figure and me, still standing there with my hands protectively cradling my belly. "I need to talk to her," he said finally, but his voice held a note of apology I hadn't heard in months. Will you be okay getting home? Before I could answer, Irene Wallace stood, her movements graceful despite her age. I live on East 79th. I'd be happy to share a cab with your wife and ensure she arrives safely. Justin nodded gratefully and rushed after Barbara, leaving me standing there with this elegant stranger who had just shattered the facade my marriage had been built upon. As we exited the subway station together, I finally found my voice. Thank you, I said, though the words seemed woefully inadequate. Not just for the cab offer, but for speaking up. Irene glanced at me, her eyes softening slightly. No one should be made to stand in your condition, especially not for someone perfectly capable of standing themselves. The rest, she waved a hand dismissively. That was just long overdue truth. As we emerged onto the bustling street, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows between the high-rises, I felt something shift inside me. Not just my daughter, adjusting her position, but something deeper. A resolve I'd lost somewhere in the years of gradual submission to Barbara's control and Justin's acquiescence. East 79th Street, you said? I asked Irene as she hailed a taxi. Yes, but we'll take you home first, she replied as a yellow cab pulled to the curb. I hesitated, my hand on the door. Actually, if you don't mind, I think I'd like to go somewhere else first. The taxi wove through Manhattan's crowded streets as I sat beside Irene Wallace, my mind replaying the subway confrontation on endless loop. The elegant brownstones of the Upper East Side passed by in a blur, my thoughts too chaotic to appreciate their stately beauty. Where are we headed, if not your home? Irene asked, her voice gentle but direct. I realized I hadn't given the driver any address. I'm not sure, I admitted, embarrassment washing over me. I just couldn't face going back to that apartment right now. Not with Barbara's things everywhere, her presence in every room. Irene nodded, understanding immediately. The Pierre has an excellent tea service. Perhaps some refreshment would do you good while you decide your next steps. 20 minutes later, we were seated in the hotel's elegant lounge, fine bone china cups before us. The plush velvet chair cradled my aching back better than any subway seat, and for the first time that day, I felt the tension in my shoulders begin to ease. How far along are you? Irene asked after our tea was served. 38 weeks, I replied, absently rubbing my rounded abdomen. She's due in 12 days. Irene echoed with a small smile. A daughter. I nodded, feeling my baby shift beneath my palm. Hope. We're naming her Hope. The irony wasn't lost on me. Hope had been in short supply in my marriage lately. Irene stirred her tea thoughtfully. Mrs. Hayes, I supplied. Grace Hayes. Though I'm starting to wonder if I should have kept my maiden name. Grace, Irene continued. I don't typically intervene in strangers' lives. What I witnessed today, however, she paused, choosing her words carefully. It struck a particular nerve. I took a sip of the fragrant tea, letting its warmth spread through me. Did Barbara really steal from a children's charity? And several others, Irene confirmed, her expression hardening momentarily. The Children's Future Foundation was my particular passion. We raised money for educational programs in underserved communities. Barbara Hunt, as she was known then, joined our board with impeccable references. Within months, donation funds began disappearing. She set her cup down with precise movements. By the time our financial audit revealed the discrepancies, she had resigned, citing family emergencies, and vanished. The police investigation stalled without sufficient evidence for prosecution. The foundation survived, but programs had to be cut. Children who needed help didn't receive it. My stomach tightened, and not from my daughter's kicks. How many times has she done this? That I can personally confirm? 4 charitable organizations, but I suspect there were others. I thought about the Barbara I knew, always impeccably, dressed, insistent on appearances, constantly reminding Justin of his duty to care for her in her fragile state after his father's death. The Barbara who had slowly infiltrated every aspect of our lives, from our wedding planning to our home decor to our future child's name. The Barbara who had somehow convinced my once independent husband that her comfort always came first. She's built her entire identity around being the sacrificing mother, I said slowly, piecing together the realization. It's how she controls Justin. He believes he owes her everything because she gave up so much for him. Irene's eyes sharpened. A convenient narrative for someone who's actually taken from others her entire life. My phone vibrated in my purse. Justin, no doubt, wondering where I was. I ignored it. For once, his concerns would have to wait. What happens now? I asked Irene. That depends on what you want to happen, Grace. She regarded me with keen intelligence. The statute of limitations has indeed expired on Barbara's financial crimes, but the truth once spoken rarely remains contained. As if on cue, my phone vibrated again, this time with a text notification. It wasn't from Justin, but from Meg, my closest friend and colleague at the elementary school. Are you okay? Seeing this on social media about Justin's mom, Call Me ASAP attached was a link to a community Facebook group. With trembling fingers, I clicked it to find a post from someone who'd been on our subway car. Just witnessed the most insane subway drama. Pregnant woman forced to stand by husband so his mother could sit. Then some society lady drops bombshell that the MIL embezzled from charities. Subway justice, where pregnant women deserve. Better, the post already had dozens of comments and shares. Someone had even taken a discreet photo showing Barbara's shocked face as Irene confronted her. It's already online, I whispered, showing Irene the phone. She didn't seem surprised. News travels quickly these days, especially news that satisfies our collective sense of justice. My phone began ringing. Justin again. This time I answered, putting it on speaker. Grace, where are you? His voice was frantic. Mom's hysterical. She says that woman was lying, that it's all a misunderstanding. Is it, Justin? I interrupted, a strange calm settling over me. Is it really a misunderstanding? There was a pause. I don't know, but she's my mother, Grace. She needs me right now. And what about what I need? The words came out stronger than I expected. What about what your daughter needs? When have either of us come first? That's not fair, he protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? You pulled me, 9 months pregnant, out of a seat on the subway so your mother could sit. Do you have any idea how that felt? Not just physically painful, but humiliating? Another pause, longer this time. Where are you? He finally asked, his tone subdued. I glanced at Irene, who gave me an encouraging nod. I'm somewhere safe thinking about things. Don't wait up, Justin. I need some time. I ended the call before he could protest, feeling simultaneously terrified and liberated by my own boldness. Well done, Irene said quietly. I don't know what to do next, I admitted, overwhelmed by the rapid unraveling of my carefully managed life. Irene reached into her purse and extracted an elegant business card. I have a guest apartment on Park Avenue that sits empty most of the year. It's yours for as long as you need to sort things out. I stared at the card, the embossed letters, blurring slightly through my tears. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Irene's expression softened, revealing a glimpse of old pain beneath her composed exterior. 42 years ago, I stood exactly where you're standing, metaphorically speaking. Young, pregnant, married to a man who couldn't see his mother's manipulation. No one intervened for me. She straightened her shoulders. I eventually found my way, but not before years of unnecessary pain. She placed her hand gently over mine. Consider this my attempt to balance some cosmic scales. As we left the pier, stepping into the gathering twilight, I felt my daughter kick vigorously, as if signaling her approval. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to imagine a different future, one where hope would grow up, seeing her mother treated with dignity, where respect wasn't just something demanded by others, but something I demanded for myself. The taxi ride to Irene's Park Avenue building passed in contemplative silence. The elegant pre-war building with its uniformed doorman felt worlds away from the cramped Upper West Side apartment where Barbara had gradually claimed every available space. As the elevator ascended to the 11th floor, my phone buzzed with texts from Justin. Please come home, we need to talk. Mom says she can explain everything. I'm worried about you and the baby. I switched my phone to silent and slipped it back into my purse. For tonight at least, I would rest. Tomorrow would bring decisions, confrontations, and perhaps the beginning of a new chapter. One written on my own terms. Dawn broke over the Park Avenue guest apartment. Golden light filtering through sheer curtains that probably cost more than my monthly salary. I had slept surprisingly well in the luxurious bedroom, my pregnant body finally comfortable on the perfect mattress. After months of being relegated to the edge of our bed at home, Barbara's frequent anxiety attacks often resulting in her sleeping in our room while Justin comforted her, the simple pleasure of stretching out freely felt almost decadent. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Justin, 5 from Barbara, and dozens of text messages ranging from concerned to accusatory. The last one, sent at 3:47 a.m., simply read, "Please just let me know you're safe." I texted back a brief response. "Safe. We'll call later." After a shower in the marble bathroom, and a breakfast of fresh fruit and yogurt that Irene had arranged to be delivered, I felt more clear-headed than I had in months. Sitting by the large windows overlooking the morning bustle of Park Avenue, I opened my laptop and typed "Barbara Hayes charity fraud" into the search bar. The results made my heart race. Overnight, the subway confrontation had exploded. Online. The original social media post had thousands of shares. 2 local news blogs had picked up the story with headlines like "Subway drama exposes alleged charity fraudster" and "Pregnant woman forced to stand while accused embezzler takes seat." Someone had even started a GoFundMe titled "Support for Subway Mom Standing Up to In-Law Abuse." But most shocking was a new article on a respected news site about Barbara's past. A journalist had connected the dots between Barbara Hunt and Barbara Hayes, uncovering a pattern of involvement with charitable organizations, followed by financial irregularities across 3 states. Former colleagues had come forward overnight with stories of Barbara's manipulative behavior, her skill at gaining trust, and her convenient disappearances when questions arose. My phone rang. Irene. "Have you seen the news?" she asked when I answered. "I'm looking at it now," I replied, scrolling through yet another article. "How did this happen so quickly?" "The internet works fast when justice is being served," Irene said, "and I may have made a few calls to old journalist friends after I left you last night." Before I could respond, my phone beeped. With another incoming call. Justin again. "I should take this," I told Irene. "Of course. I'll stop by around noon to check on you." I switched calls, my heart pounding. "Hello, Justin." "Grace, thank God." His voice sounded ragged, as if he hadn't slept. "Where are you? Are you okay? The baby?" "We're both fine," I interrupted. I needed space to think. "There are news articles, Grace. Articles about Mom, saying horrible things. Are they true?" I asked directly. A long pause followed. "I don't know," he finally admitted. "She keeps saying it's all misunderstandings, that money was moved for legitimate purposes, that she left those organizations for personal reasons, but she can't explain the timing, or why she never told me about any of this." I closed my eyes, feeling an unexpected wave of compassion for him. Justin had been raised by Barbara after his father died when he was 12. She had been his entire world, his compass for what was right and wrong. Learning that compass might have been broken all along would be devastating. "I think we need to talk," I said. "In person, but not at home, and not with Barbara present." We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe near Central Park at 11. As I prepared to leave the apartment, my phone rang again. My OB/GYN's office. "Mrs. Hayes, Dr. Patel would like you to come in for a blood pressure check today. Your numbers were borderline at your last visit, and with your due date so close..." I agreed to come by after meeting Justin, though I suspected my elevated blood pressure had more to do with Barbara's constant presence than any pregnancy complications. Still, I couldn't take risks with Hope's health. At the cafe, I spotted Justin immediately. He looked terrible. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, his usually immaculate clothes rumpled. When he saw me, his face crumpled with relief, then concern, then uncertainty, as if he wasn't sure how to greet me anymore. I eased my heavily pregnant body into the chair, across from him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "Are you really okay?" he finally asked, his voice soft. "Physically, yes," I replied. "Emotionally, I don't know, Justin. Yesterday was a breaking point for me." He winced. "The subway, I shouldn't have..." He stopped, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I was wrong. So wrong. I don't know what I was thinking." "Don't you?" I challenged, gently. "You were thinking what you always think. Mom comes first. Her needs, her comfort, her demands, they always take priority, even over your pregnant wife." He looked down at his untouched coffee. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. When Mom moved in, I thought she'd be helping you, supporting us both before the baby came. But that's not what happened, is it?" I pressed. "Instead, she took over our lives, our home, our marriage, and you let her. She's my mother," he said weakly, "and I'm your wife. And this," I placed both hands on my rounded belly, "is your daughter. We should matter most." Justin's eyes filled with tears. "I've messed everything up, haven't I? And now with these articles, Grace, what if it's all true? What if Mom really did steal from those charities?" I reached across the table to take his hand. Despite everything, my heart ached for him. "I think you know the answer to that. The question is, what are you going to do now?" Justin's hand trembled beneath mine. I confronted her last night after seeing the first article, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She denied everything at first, then got angry. Said I was betraying her, just like everyone else. And then? I prompted when he trailed off. He swallowed hard. Then she broke down. Said it wasn't stealing exactly, that she'd borrowed from the foundation accounts during a difficult time, intending to pay it back. His eyes met mine, filled with disillusionment, but she never did. And it wasn't just once. The cafe buzzed with morning conversations around us. The normalcy of others' lives, a stark contrast to the unraveling of ours. A barista called out drink orders. Someone laughed at a nearby table. I waited, giving Justin space to continue processing the truth he'd avoided for so long. My whole life, he said finally. She talked about sacrifice. How she gave up her career to raise me after Dad died. How she went without so I could have opportunities. He shook, his head in disbelief. But it was all funded by money taken from children who had nothing. I squeezed his hand. People are complex, Justin. Your mother loves you in her way. That doesn't excuse what she did, but it can be true alongside the hard truths. How do you still have compassion for her, after how she's treated you? His question held genuine wonder. I don't know if it's compassion. Exactly, I admitted. But I've spent the last 24 hours thinking about what must be broken inside someone to build their entire identity on lies. To need control so desperately that they'd hurt the people closest to them to maintain it. Justin's phone buzzed insistently. He glanced at it, then switched it to silent. She's been calling nonstop. Says the press is hounding her. That reporters came to our building this morning. What are you going to do? I asked, the question hanging between us like a delicate glass about to shatter. He took a deep breath. I've taken a week of emergency leave from work. Mom needs to leave our apartment. Today. I'm going to help her find a place to stay while she sorts this out. But she can't live with us anymore. His eyes searched mine. That is, if you're coming home? The question caught me off guard. Despite everything, I hadn't seriously considered not returning. Yet the prospect of walking back into that apartment, with its lingering sense of Barbara's dominion, made my chest tighten. I have an appointment with Dr. Patel after this, I said, avoiding a direct answer. My blood pressure has been elevated. Concern immediately overshadowed everything else in Justin's expression. Is the baby okay, are you? Just precautionary, I assured him. But stress isn't good for either of us right now. Let me come with you, he said, reaching for my other hand. Please, Grace, let me start being the husband you deserve. The sincerity in his voice touched something inside me that had been walled off for months. I nodded slowly. Okay. As we left the cafe, Justin instinctively offered his arm for support. A small gesture that would have seemed natural before Barbara moved in, but which now felt like a tentative peace offering. I took it, feeling the familiar warmth of his body beside mine. At the doctor's office, my blood pressure was indeed elevated, though not dangerously so. Dr. Patel, a petite woman, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner, listened attentively as I explained the recent stress, carefully avoiding mention of the public scandal unfolding around my mother-in-law. Bed rest until delivery, she advised firmly. Minimal stress. Your baby is healthy, but let's keep her that way, yes? As we left the medical building, Justin looked stricken. This is my fault. I let Mom create an environment so toxic it's affecting your health. It's not just you, I conceded. I allowed it too. I stopped standing up for myself, stopped insisting on boundaries. I paused on the sidewalk, turning to face him fully. But that ends now, Justin. If I come home, things have to be different. Completely different. They will be, he promised. Mom will be gone by tonight, and I'll take care of you, both of you. He gently placed his hand on my belly, where Hope was performing what felt like gymnastics. I felt my daughter kick against his palm, a forceful movement that made Justin's eyes widen in surprise and something like wonder. In that moment, watching his face as he connected with our child, I glimpsed the man I'd fallen in love with, the one who'd been slowly erased under Barbara's influence. I need to get some things from Irene's apartment, I said, and I should thank her properly. Justin nodded, though I could see uncertainty in his eyes at the mention of Irene, the woman who had catalyzed this entire upheaval. I'll get a cab. At Irene's building, I asked Justin to wait downstairs. This goodbye needed to be private. When Irene welcomed me into the guest apartment, her shrewd eyes immediately assessed my demeanor. You're going back to him, she stated rather than asked. Yes, I replied, but on new terms. Barbara's leaving today. Irene nodded, seeming neither surprised nor judgmental. And what happens when hope arrives? When you're exhausted from newborn care and vulnerable? Will he stand firm then, or will his mother find her way back in? It was a question I'd asked myself repeatedly over the last 24 hours. I don't know, I admitted. But I need to give us, a chance to find out. Fair enough, Irene said, her expression softening. But remember, this apartment is here if you need it. And so am I. I impulsively embraced her, this elegant stranger who had become an unexpected ally. Thank you for being the catalyst I needed. For speaking up when no one else would. She returned the hug with surprising warmth. Courage is contagious, Grace. Yesterday I spoke up. Today you did. When I rejoined Justin in the lobby, he looked anxious. Is everything okay? Yes, I said, with more certainty than I'd felt in months. Let's go home. The taxi ride was quiet, both of us lost in thought as we crossed the city toward our Upper West Side apartment. As we approached our building, I noticed a news van parked across the street. They've been here all morning, Justin said grimly. Mom says she can't even leave the building without being photographed. For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy for Barbara. Public humiliation was a harsh punishment, even for someone who had caused so much damage. Then I remembered being forced to stand on that subway. The whispers of strangers. The helplessness. Actions have consequences, I said, more to myself than to Justin. Our apartment felt different when we entered. Tense, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Barbara sat rigidly on the sofa, her normally perfect appearance disheveled, her eyes red-rimmed. When she saw me, her expression hardened. So you've come. Back, she said coldly. After what you've done. What I've done, I echoed incredulous. Don't pretend innocence. You and that Wallace woman planned this, didn't you? To humiliate me, to turn Justin against me. Justin stepped between us. Stop, Mom. Grace didn't plan anything. You created this situation. All of it. Barbara's face crumpled at her son's words. How can you say that? After everything I've sacrificed for you? Did you sacrifice, Mom? Or did you take from others to give to me? Justin's voice was steady but pained. Did you steal from children to pay for my college? For our home? Was any of what you gave me actually yours to give? The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Barbara looked away, her shoulders sagging in defeat. I did what I had to do. To give you the life you deserved. No, Justin said firmly. You did what was easy, not what was right. And now we're all paying for it. He took a deep breath. I've booked you a room at the Beresford Hotel. Your taxi will be here in an hour. Pack what you need for a few weeks. Barbara's eyes widened in shock. You're sending me away? Now? When I need you most? Grace needs me most, Justin replied, his voice unwavering as he moved to stand beside me. Our daughter needs me most. And right now, they need a home without you in it. For 3 days, our apartment felt like a space newly reclaimed. Justin removed the numerous throw pillows Barbara had insisted upon, rearranged the living room furniture to my preference, and cleared her toiletries from our bathroom. We ordered takeout, watched movies without interruption, and slowly began to rediscover the comfortable rhythm we'd once shared. Justin took his responsibility for bed rest seriously, bringing me books, adjusting pillows, and handling all household tasks. The transformation in him was both heartening and bittersweet. I couldn't help wondering why it had taken such a public catastrophe to awaken him to Barbara's manipulation. Have you spoken to your mother? I asked on the third evening as we sat together on the couch, my swollen feet in his lap as he massaged them gently. His hands paused momentarily. Briefly, she's hired a lawyer to handle the press. There's talk of a statement addressing the misunderstandings about her charitable work. His tone made clear what he thought of this strategy. I told her I need a space right now. How did she take that? He sighed. Not well. She cried, said I was abandoning her when she needs me most. His eyes met mine. But I'm not falling for that anymore. Not after seeing how clearly she's used that tactic to control me all these years. I nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Relief at his clarity, sadness for his disillusionment, lingering anger at how long it had taken. It's strange, he continued, resuming the foot massage. Looking back, I can see how she isolated me after Dad died, moved us away from family friends, told me everyone else had ulterior motives, or didn't understand our special bond. He shook his head. Classic manipulation. And I never questioned it. You were a child who'd lost his father, I said softly. Of course you clung to her. But I wasn't a child when I met you. I wasn't a child when I let her move in and take over our lives. His voice caught. I wasn't a child when I made my pregnant wife stand on that subway. I winced at the memory, still fresh despite everything that had happened since. No, you weren't. I don't know if you can ever fully forgive me for that, he said, his eyes glistening. I'm not sure I can forgive myself. Before I could respond, a sharp pain gripped my abdomen. I gasped, clutching my belly as the sensation intensified, then gradually subsided. Justin's face paled. What is it? What's wrong? I took a deep breath as the pain receded. I think that was a contraction. His eyes widened. But you're not due for another week. I managed a small, nervous laugh. Apparently, Hope has other ideas. We timed the contractions, irregular at first, but gradually establishing a pattern. By midnight, they were coming every 7 minutes, and we called Dr. Patel. Her calm voice instructed us to head to the hospital when the contractions reached 5 minutes apart. By 2 a.m., we were checking into Mount Sinai's labor and delivery unit. The contractions had intensified, each one a powerful wave that required all my focus to ride out. Justin stayed close, offering his hand to squeeze, whispering encouragements, his face a mixture of concern and awe. You're 4 centimeters dilated, the nurse announced after examining me. We're going to get you settled in a delivery room. The hours that followed blurred into a landscape of pain, determination, and brief respites. Justin never left. My side, even when I gripped his hand so tightly I feared I might break bones. He wiped my brow, fed me ice chips, and advocated for me when I was too exhausted to speak for myself. You're doing amazingly, he murmured as dawn broke outside our window. I've never seen anyone so strong. Through the haze of pain, his words reached me. This was a different Justin, not the man who deferred to his mother's wishes or prioritized her comfort over mine, but the partner I'd always believed he could be. At 8:47 a.m., after 14 hours of labor, Hope Alexandra Hayes entered the world with a powerful cry that seemed to announce her presence to the universe. 7 pounds, 3 ounces of perfection with a shock of dark hair and tiny fingers that curled instinctively around mine when placed on my chest. She's beautiful, Justin whispered, tears streaming freely down his face as he gently touched our daughter's cheek, just like her mother. As I held our newborn daughter, exhausted but filled with a love so fierce it took my breath away, I felt something settle inside me, a certainty that had been missing for too long. Whatever happened next, whatever challenges we faced, I would never again allow anyone to diminish me or make me feel less worthy. Hope deserved a mother who stood tall in her own power. The first day of Hope's life passed in a blur of feedings, diaper changes, and visits from hospital staff. Justin handled each new parental challenge with determination, his focus entirely on our tiny family unit. Late that afternoon, as Hope slept peacefully in my arms and Justin dozed in the visitor's chair, a gentle knock sounded at our door. I expected a nurse, but instead Irene Wallace stepped in, carrying an elegant gift bag. I hope I'm not intruding, she said softly, her eyes immediately drawn to the bundle in my arms. Not at all, I replied, genuinely pleased to see her. Come meet Hope. Irene approached with reverent steps, her composed demeanor softening as she gazed at my daughter. She's exquisite, she whispered, placing the gift bag on the bedside table. Congratulations, Grace. Justin stirred, blinking awake. When he saw Irene, he straightened immediately, an instinctive wariness crossing his features. Mrs. Wallace, he said formally. Irene regarded him coolly. Mr. Hayes. I could feel the tension between them, Justin's lingering resentment at having his mother's carefully constructed image shattered, Irene's protective suspicion of the man who had made his pregnant wife stand on a subway. But today wasn't for old grievances. Would you like to hold her? I asked Irene, breaking the uncomfortable silence. Surprise flickered across her face, followed by something tender I hadn't seen before. I'd be honored. As I carefully transferred Hope to Irene's experienced arms, Justin watched with an unreadable expression. Hope squirmed briefly, then settled, one tiny hand escaping her blanket. Hello, little one, Irene murmured. You've arrived in quite the dramatic fashion, haven't you? The comment broke the tension, and even Justin smiled slightly. As Irene cradled our daughter with practiced ease, I noticed a shadow pass across her face, a fleeting melancholy quickly masked. Did you have children? I asked gently. She nodded, still gazing at Hope. A son. He's in London now, a surgeon. We speak monthly. Something in her tone suggested a distance beyond mere geography, and a daughter who never drew breath. She touched Hope's cheek with infinite tenderness. She would have been 41 this year. The revelation hung in the air, adding new dimensions to my understanding of this formidable woman and her immediate connection to our situation. Justin cleared his throat. Mrs. Wallace, thank you for being there for Grace when I wasn't. Irene looked up, studying him with those penetrating eyes. After a moment, she nodded, the smallest acknowledgement of his words. You have a beautiful family, Mr. Hayes. I trust you'll treasure them accordingly. As she handed Hope back to me, Irene's expression softened. I've brought a small gift. Nothing extravagant, just something I thought might be meaningful. Inside the elegant bag was a soft, hand-knitted blanket in pale yellow wool, and beneath it, a small velvet box. I opened it to find a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny, perfect diamond that caught the light like a star. For Hope, Irene explained, a reminder that true worth comes from within, not from what others bestow upon us. The gift's significance wasn't lost on me, or on Justin, whose expression reflected both understanding and regret. Hope might bear his mother's genetic legacy, but she would forge her own path, one built on truth and genuine worth rather than manipulation and false sacrifice. As Irene prepared to leave, she leaned close to kiss my cheek. Remember, you're always welcome, she whispered, pressing something into my palm. A key to the Park Avenue apartment, I realized. Not a demand, not an expectation, but a choice. A safety net if I needed it. After she left, Justin moved to sit beside me on the bed, gently touching Hope's tiny fingers. She's still uncertain about me, he observed. Irene, can you blame her? He shook his head. No, I have a lot to prove, to both of you. He looked down at our daughter, sleeping peacefully between us. I won't let either of you down again. I promise. I wanted to believe him. In that moment, with our newborn daughter completing the picture of the family we'd planned to be, I chose to. The first months with Hope transformed our lives in ways both expected and surprising. Sleepless nights blended into bleary-eyed days as we navigated the steep learning curve of new parenthood. Justin took an extended paternity leave, throwing himself fully into fatherhood with a dedication that helped rebuild my trust day by day. Barbara remained a complicated absence in our lives. She had issued a carefully worded public statement about administrative misunderstandings during her charitable work, but the damage to her reputation was irreparable. Multiple former organizations had begun formal reviews of their finances during her tenure. She called Justin frequently, always when I was nursing or napping, I noticed, and occasionally sent expensive gifts for Hope that arrived without cards. She wants to see the baby, Justin told me one evening as we sat on our newly purchased sofa, Hope sleeping against my chest. The old furniture, too saturated with Barbara's presence, had been donated. I tensed, instinctively cradling Hope closer. What did you tell her? That it's too soon. He reached over to stroke our daughter's downy head, that we're still establishing our routines and boundaries. His eyes met mine, that it's your decision as much as mine. I exhaled slowly, grateful for his response but aware of the weight behind it. Barbara was still his mother, Hope's grandmother. Total estrangement wasn't a simple solution, despite what she had done. Maybe in a few months, I conceded, in a neutral location. And not alone with her, not ever. Justin nodded, accepting these terms without argument. This, too, was new. His willingness to prioritize my comfort, to recognize my concerns as valid rather than defensive. When Hope was 3 months old, Irene invited us to a small dinner at her Park Avenue apartment. Justin hesitated when I showed him the invitation. Are you sure she wants me there too? He asked. She specifically included you, I assured him, though I'd had the same thought initially. The evening proved unexpectedly healing. Irene had invited 2 other couples, friends from her charitable work, and conversation flowed easily over excellent food and wine. I watched Justin charm our fellow guests with his natural warmth, saw him engage thoughtfully when the topic turned to ethical philanthropy, noticed the approving glances Irene cast his way when he insisted on holding Hope so I could enjoy my meal uninterrupted. Your husband is not what I expected, Irene murmured as we stood together in her kitchen after dinner, refilling coffee cups. He's made genuine changes. Yes, I agreed, watching through the doorway as Justin gently bounced Hope while discussing educational initiatives with one of the other guests. He's working hard to be the man I thought I married. And you? Irene asked, her gaze shrewd but kind. Are you finding your voice again? The question struck me as profoundly insightful. Barbara's dominance hadn't just pushed me physically aside, it had gradually silenced me, made me doubt my own perceptions, my own worth. I'm trying, I said honestly. Some days are easier than others. Irene nodded, understanding in her eyes. Reclaiming yourself is a process, not an event. Be patient with yourself. As autumn faded into winter, our little family established new patterns and rituals untainted by Barbara's influence. I returned to teaching part-time, finding joy in both my career and motherhood. Justin's architecture firm had promoted him, recognizing his renewed focus and creativity. Hope thrived, growing from a helpless newborn into a curious, smiling infant with her father's dark hair and my determined expression. In January, when Hope was 6 months old, we finally agreed to meet Barbara at a restaurant near Central Park. I insisted on choosing the location, a busy brunch spot where we could leave easily if needed. Thank you for this, Barbara said when we arrived, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. She looked older, the carefully maintained facade of youthful elegance beginning to crack under the weight of public scrutiny and private reckoning. Justin placed a protective hand on my lower back as we sat, Hope secure in her carrier between us. This is a first step, Mom. Just a meal. Barbara nodded, her eyes fixed on Hope, who stared back with solemn curiosity. She's beautiful. Her voice caught. She has your eyes, Justin. She has Grace's spirit, he replied pointedly. The meal progressed with strained politeness. Barbara made visible efforts to engage with me directly, rather than speaking through Justin as she once had. She asked thoughtful questions about Hope's development and my return to teaching. She refrained from offering unsolicited advice or criticism. Yet, beneath this careful performance, I sensed the same person. Someone who measured her worth through control, who viewed relationships as transactions, who believed love was proven through dominance rather than support. When Hope began to fuss toward the end of the meal, I lifted her from her carrier. Barbara instinctively reached out, clearly expecting me to hand the baby to her. Not today, I said, quietly but firmly. We're still getting to know each other again, Barbara. Her face fell, but she withdrew her hands without protest. Progress, however small. As we prepared to leave, Barbara placed a heavy envelope on the table. For Hope's education, she said. A trust fund I've established. Justin frowned. Mom, it's clean money, she interrupted, correctly reading his hesitation. From the sale of my jewelry and investments. Nothing questionable. Her eyes pleaded for acceptance. Please, let me do this one thing right. Justin looked at me, deferring to my judgment in a way that still felt revolutionary after years of his automatic acquiescence to his mother. We'll think about it, I said, leaving the envelope untouched. Hope doesn't need money. She needs healthy relationships. Barbara's lips tightened briefly before she nodded in reluctant understanding. Outside the restaurant, bundling Hope against the January chill, Justin exhaled heavily. That was a start, I finished for him. Just a start. He nodded, wrapping an arm around my shoulders as we walked through the winter sunlight. I'm proud of you. Of us. I leaned into his embrace, feeling Hope's warm weight against my chest. The long shadow of Barbara's influence hadn't disappeared entirely. Perhaps it never would, but it no longer blocked our light. That evening, as we prepared dinner in our kitchen, now arranged according to my preferences rather than Barbara's, my phone chimed with a text from Irene. Saw the meeting went ahead today. How are you feeling? I smiled at her ongoing concern and typed back, standing my ground. In every sense. Her reply came quickly. As you should. Always. Standing my ground. The phrase resonated deeply. From that humiliating moment on the subway when Justin had physically removed me from my seat, to this quiet evening in our reclaimed home, the journey had been about learning to stand. For myself, for my daughter, for the respect I deserved. As Hope babbled happily in her high chair and Justin moved around the kitchen with easy confidence, I felt something settle into place. Not perfect, not finished, but real and true. A foundation we were rebuilding, brick by careful brick, strong enough to weather whatever storms might come. 1 year after that fateful subway ride, I stood on the platform of the same station, Hope balanced on my hip as we waited for the F train. At 18 months, she was a whirlwind of energy and determination, with curious eyes that missed nothing, and a stubborn streak that both challenged and delighted us. Train, she announced excitedly as the headlights appeared in the tunnel. That's right, sweet girl, I laughed, adjusting her little backpack. "We're taking the train to see Aunt Meg." As we boarded, a businessman immediately stood, offering his seat with a smile. "Please, you have your hands full." "Thank you," I replied, settling Hope on my lap as the train pulled away. The simple courtesy brought a wave of reflection. A year ago, I would have questioned whether I deserved such kindness, whether my comfort mattered. Now I accepted it with grace, modeling for my daughter that her mother's dignity was natural and expected. Life had found a new equilibrium in the wake of Barbara's disgrace. Justin and I had rebuilt our marriage through countless honest conversations, couples therapy, and a mutual commitment to creating something healthier than what we'd known before. He had worked consistently to prove his priorities had truly shifted, and slowly my trust had been restored. Not blindly, but with clear eyes and firm boundaries. Barbara remained a peripheral figure in our lives, allowed brief, supervised visits with Hope, included in occasional family gatherings, but no longer granted the power to dictate or dominate. The trust fund she had offered remained untouched in an escrow account, a bridge we had not yet decided whether to cross. Irene Wallace had become an unexpected constant, a blend of mentor and friend whose weekly teas with Hope and me provided a touchstone of wisdom and warmth. Justin joined us occasionally, the initial tension between them gradually softening into a cautious mutual respect. The subway rocked gently as we traveled downtown. Hope babbled happily, pointing out colorful advertisements and waving at fellow passengers. When the train lurched unexpectedly, I steadied her with practiced hands, thinking of how different this journey was from that day a year ago. My phone buzzed with a text from Justin. "Meeting finished early. Need me to pick up anything for dinner?" I smiled, tapping back a quick reply. These small domestic exchanges, once overshadowed by Barbara's constant interference, now formed the reliable rhythm of our shared life. As the train approached Meg's stop, I gathered our things, preparing to disembark. The doors opened, and I stepped onto the platform with Hope secure in my arms. The crowd parted slightly, making space for a mother and child, a small courtesy that still felt significant. "Grace?" The voice behind me was familiar, though I hadn't heard it in months. I turned to find Barbara standing there, elegant as always, but somehow diminished, her confident posture replaced by something more hesitant. "Barbara?" I acknowledged, instinctively shifting Hope to my other hip, creating a subtle distance. "This is unexpected." "I was meeting with my lawyer in the city," she explained, her eyes fixed on Hope, who regarded her grandmother with wary curiosity. "What a coincidence." I nodded, doubting it was coincidence at all. Barbara had always been strategic in her accidental appearances. "She's grown so much," Barbara continued, reaching out as if to touch Hope's cheek. Hope turned her face away, burying it against my neck, a toddler's intuitive response to someone who felt like a stranger despite being blood. Barbara's hand fell, her expression flickering with hurt. I hoped she might remember me better by now. "Children have their own timetable for these things," I said, neither apologizing nor accusing. "We can't force connections." A year ago, I would have felt obligated to soothe Barbara's feelings, to allow her to hold Hope despite my daughter's obvious discomfort. Now I stood firm, protective without being hostile. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Barbara said after a moment, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. "About everything that happened. The charity boards, the money." She glanced around, lowering her voice. "My therapist says I need to make amends, but I don't know how to even begin." I hadn't known she was seeing a therapist. Justin hadn't mentioned it, though perhaps he didn't know either. The thought that Barbara might be genuinely attempting to change was both surprising and slightly disorienting. "Amends take time," I said carefully, "and they're about actions, not words." She nodded, looking older than I remembered, the carefully maintained facade showing cracks. "I know I hurt you, Grace. I was threatened by you, by how much Justin loved you." Her admission seemed physically painful. "I've never been good at sharing the people I love." Hope squirmed in my arms, ready to continue our journey. I adjusted her weight, conscious of the passing minutes, of Meg waiting for us. "We need to go," I said, neither accepting nor rejecting Barbara's awkward attempt at apology. "Of course." She stepped back. "Perhaps, would it be possible for me to join you all for dinner sometime next week? Justin mentioned you've been trying that new Italian place on Amsterdam." The old familiar tension rose within me, the pull to accommodate, to smooth things over, to put Barbara's wants above my own comfort. But alongside it came the stronger, newer certainty that my boundaries mattered. Not next week, I said firmly. We have a lot going on right now, but I'll talk to Justin, and we'll find a time that works for all of us. Disappointment crossed Barbara's face, but she nodded with unexpected acceptance. I understand. Thank you for considering it. As we parted ways, hope's warm weight against my chest, I felt neither triumph nor anger, just the quiet certainty of standing in my own power. Barbara no longer loomed as an adversary to be feared or a force to be resisted. She was simply a flawed woman whose influence over our family had been rightfully diminished. Meg was waiting at our agreed meeting spot, her face lighting up at the sight of Hope. As my daughter squealed with delight at seeing her godmother, I briefly recounted the unexpected encounter. How did it feel? Meg asked as we walked toward the park. Seeing her without Justin there as a buffer? I considered the question. Easier than I expected. Like she's lost her power to intimidate me. Meg smiled, squeezing my arm. Because you found your power instead. Later that evening, after Hope was tucked into bed and Justin and I settled on our couch with glasses of wine, I told him about meeting Barbara. She's seeing a therapist? He asked, clearly surprised. That's what she said, I replied. And she wants to have dinner with us. Justin studied my expression. How do you feel about that? A year ago, he would have automatically agreed to his mother's request, perhaps even insisting that I comply regardless of my feelings. The change in him wasn't just in the question he asked, but in the genuine way he waited for my answer, ready to be guided by my comfort rather than his mother's demands. I'm not opposed to it, I said thoughtfully, but on our terms, in a restaurant not our home, and not next week. He nodded. Completely reasonable. He set his wine glass down, taking my hand in his. You know, I was thinking about something today. Do you remember that woman on the subway? The one who confronted Mom? Irene, I said, smiling at the irony that the woman who had been a catalyst for such upheaval was now a cherished friend. Before her, I was blind to what was happening, to what I was allowing, what I was participating in. His expression grew solemn. I've never properly thanked her for forcing me to see the truth. Maybe you should, I suggested. She's coming for tea on Thursday. You could join us. He squeezed my hand. I will. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the muted sounds of the city creating a gentle backdrop to our quiet evening. I'm proud of us, I said finally, of how far we've come. Justin's eyes met mine, warm with understanding and shared history, both the painful parts and the healing that had followed. Me too. Especially you, Grace. You taught me what real strength looks like. As we cleared our wine glasses and checked on Hope one last time before bed, I thought about the long journey from that humiliating moment on the subway to this peaceful evening in our home. Truly our home now, filled with our choices, our priorities, our love. The woman who had stood trembling on that train, pregnant and afraid to assert her most basic needs, seemed both intimately familiar and distant, like a character in a story I once knew. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who had learned that dignity wasn't something others could take away. It was something I claimed for myself, day by day, choice by choice. Hope would grow up seeing this version of her mother, a woman who stood firmly in her own worth, who accepted kindness as her due, who set boundaries without apology, who loved deeply without surrendering herself. The legacy I would pass to my daughter wouldn't be one of submission or sacrifice, but of authentic strength and self-respect. As Justin and I got ready for bed, moving around each other with the easy choreography of a couple who had weathered storms and found their way back to shore, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The face looking back at me was neither defiant nor defeated, but simply present, aware, alive with quiet certainty. This, I realized, was the true gift that had emerged from that painful subway confrontation, not just the unmasking of Barbara's fraudulent past or the recalibration of my marriage, but my own internal transformation. The subway seat I had been forced to surrender had ultimately led me to claim something far more valuable, my own immovable place in the world, my unquestionable right to occupy space, my absolute certainty that I deserved respect. Some lessons came at a high price. Some journeys took unexpected detours. But standing now in the quiet bedroom of our peaceful home, with my daughter sleeping soundly and my marriage rebuilt on stronger foundations, I knew that every difficult step had led exactly where I needed to be. Not to a perfect life, such things didn't exist, but to a dignified one. A life where I stood tall, even in the face of those who once made me small. A life where respect wasn't demanded or begged for, but simply expected as the natural order of things. A life finally and completely my own.